because we have the masks on?
Yeah, and the fan
Is
really
louder.
loud. Yeah.
I think you said you're doing environmental engineering, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. I was really mad. I was thinking about doing that, but at U of A, they didn't offer it until the year I was graduating. And I was like, oh, how convenient.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stay here for another 4 years. But it's good to get into. But I think I saw the programs at like U of A and ASU, and they have a heavy focus for like water treatment plants and like all the bobos.
Yeah.
You don't get to see.
Okay, we have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 6:02 p.m. on the 6th of June. The meeting is being recorded. I'm Barb Bosher, I'm the Community Development Coordinator. I was here at the last meeting. I'm just sitting quietly while we did all the talking. What is it like right now? The talking tonight. The presentation that you have, the technical presentation, there was a change to one of the pages, slide 13, and they'd already been stapled, so I'm going to give you this sheet just to have separately and insert it yourself when you get there.
Sometimes Kyle Johnson, who's one of our engineers, he does these like EIP trainings for folks, and he goes like SAP systems, irrigation systems, and he talks about them. It's a whole in-depth thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely try to go to those if you can, because he's in Phoenix, so it's definitely just to see. But those are always, he's really good about explaining stuff. And I think that would be really beneficial to see is do different types of stuff that you're not going to get to see in school. They don't really go into it that much. I just saw.
I'm trying to be on. What day are there? Before we get started, as I said, I'm Barb Bosher with ADQ. This is...
Hi, I'm Gianna. I spoke last time at our presentation. I'll be doing it again today. So hopefully we'll have more to talk about today for you guys.
Hazel, you gotta speak up.
Oh, sorry. I don't speak very loudly, so if you can't hear me, please tell me to speak louder.
I'll just chirp my ear weeds.
This is Presley Blake. She's an intern with our unit for the summer. She's an ASU student. Engineering? Yeah. So we want to go around and introduce the CAB members. Or first, let's introduce our interpreter for the evening. Kate. Nice. And let's start with you.
David Shintel, Camelback.
Bill Owens, co-chair, yeah.
Megan Tilden. Gustavo Rodriguez.
Helen Stevenson.
Great. You guys want to? You don't have to.
Mike Cash, lived in the neighborhood, long.
Okay.
Julia Rosaro, City.
Okay. Where are you? Oh, here you are.
Hi, I'm Isaac Robles. I'm a PhD student at Remedial Investigation.
And she is the new CAB applicant that we're going to discuss later. So, first thing that we usually do at each meeting is go over the previous meeting minutes. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at them. I sent them to you in email and will mail you are and here. Does anybody have anything they want to discuss, any changes they feel need to be made to how we wrote up the minutes for the last meeting?
I just have one suggestion.
Yeah, please.
Under item number 3, I want to say it's like the fifth sentence where it says Arizona water quality standards. I think we need to add the word aquifer in front of water quality standards.
Yep. You are correct. So, does everybody see where that is in item 3? First paragraph. We wrote Arizona water quality standards. You should say Arizona aquifer water quality standards. Is everybody okay with that? There. Are you a CAB member?
Yeah.
Awesome. Right over here.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Leopoldo Rodríguez, es la primera vez que me encuentro aquí con ustedes.
Good afternoon. My name is Leopoldo Meraz Rodriguez. It's the first time that I'm here with you guys. Yeah, he's one of our captains. So let's wait just a minute if you don't mind and let get the headset set up for him because we're going to take a vote on the minutes and I want him to be able to participate.
Did you do the recording?
Yeah. Yeah. Did I say the time?
They I don't know.
The time we started?
Yeah, I definitely understood. Not paying attention.
If anything, I forget the time we stop. Ready to go.
You know what? We'll open this on the record. I came to a different trailer in my car. It didn't help, so we have to make adjustment. Exact number on the street, roads, and streets. So there's a fire example of the board. Someone else board and not in front of me. It was no evening. So it just came. It came to the park. I know I put it on this.
No, you did, because I remember. There's somebody else that I didn't know was in the same
Okay.
location.
Right,
They got it? Forgive me.
Good question, I was gonna bring that up, I forgot.
Yeah, glad. We're ready.
So if we make that adjustment, this is time.
Okay, thanks for waiting. So we have the one proposed change, adding the word aquifer. Anybody else have any comments on the minutes? Okay, if you have no further changes other than that one, then we would need to take a vote to amend as we've discussed and enter into the record. So I would need somebody to make a motion to do that.
I move to approve the minutes with the amendment we discussed this evening.
Great. Second? What do you have to say? Oh, you don't get anything. So now we need a vote. Everybody in favor of the proposal?
Since I'm not too sure what it was about, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Great. So next item on the agenda is to go over a presentation about the WQARF process itself. We covered a little bit of this at the last meeting, but this is a little bit more in detail. I'll try not to linger too long on it, but we want to try to give you guys an idea of the whole process and what will happen at the site over the years.
Does the laser still work? Does the laser still work?
Yeah, the laser works.
Okay.
Sorry, just a sec. There we go. Okay. So, a little bit about the history of the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. We were established as an agency around 1986, 1987. The mission of the agency is to enhance and protect human health and the environment in Arizona. So WQARF is the Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund, as we explained the last time. So it is a state fund to clean up groundwater and soil contaminated sites. Kind of like the federal EPA Superfund program, WQARF is our state Superfund program. This is a little hard to read out here, so hopefully you can see on your copies. There's three components to our WQARF team. The first component is our community involvement team, which is me and Wendy. So we conduct the meetings and, handle anything that goes out to the public. We create fact sheets, presentations, talk to community members, that kind of thing. We have a legal team that handles things like access agreements. If we need to drill a well somewhere, we have an agreement to go on somebody's property to do so. You can have what's called a prospective purchaser agreement. If you're going to buy a piece of property that's within one of our work sites, you can have a special agreement drawn up to make sure that you won't be held liable, hopefully, for the contamination. We have settlements. So as Wendy said last time, we do try to seek recovery of the costs for our cleanups from the people responsible for the contamination. And many times they go into the settlement where they come to an agreement of how much money they'll give us. So that's what our legal team does. And then of course we have our project management team, which in this case is Gianna and our many project managers, and they're the real meat and bones of the WQARF program. So Gianna is the one that's going out and doing all the field work, putting in the wells, determining where wells need to go, doing all the tests to see eventually find out what's the best way to clean up the site. So that's the three components of our WQARF program. So this is the WQARF chart. I know we showed this to you last time, and we're going to go over it slide by slide. But this is the process from top to bottom. So the very first thing is the preliminary investigation, and that's what Gianna talked about last time. Like, what have we done? How do we know there's a problem there? Well, we found out, we did some testing, and looked, and did all this work. That's the preliminary investigation. At the end of that, we either decide, hey, there's no problem here, or we decide it needs to be a WQARF site. In this case, we decided to put it on the WQARF registry. At the very beginning, or at any point during the process, if we see that there's a need for sort of an emergency response, somebody needs drinking water, a hazardous situation, we can go in and do that immediately if we need to. Following all that, it sort of goes down from there in the red. The next step that we're going to be on now is the remedial investigation. So that's just what it sounds like. It's an investigation to find out where the contamination is fully, how far it's spread, where it's going, all that. This will take a little while. This is a step that we're going to be in a little bit. Jen will tell you more about that in her presentation. After that, we have sort of two interim reports, then we get to the feasibility study and the proposed remedial action plan and the record of decision. And I'll explain what those are in a minute. But you can keep this and you can refer back to it to see where we are in the process. So the preliminary investigation, as I said, is where we receive information and there might be contamination somewhere, we go out and investigate. The early response action, that's the action where we feel something needs to be addressed immediately, we just do it. We take a bottle of water to people that have needed drinking water, things like that. Remedial Investigation, that's the phase we're in now at 51st and Camelback, which is the phase where we're going to do a full investigation, fully define hopefully the problem, and where it is and where it's going, and what it is. Following the remedial investigation, we get to the feasibility study. So the feasibility study is where we think about what are the best ways to clean the site up. We come up with several proposals, several ideas for cleaning it up, and we put it in a report called the feasibility study. After that, we have the proposed remedial action plan, and that's where we present to everyone the one we've chosen, right? Based on the input we've had from the community and our technical people, everybody involved, the proposed remedial action plan says, okay, we've decided this is what we want to do to clean this up. Most of these reports, not the feasibility study, but most of them do have comment periods. So for instance, this report, when we put it out, the public has 90 days to comment on it. They can comment on everything from the spelling to what we're proposing. They can offer suggestions. It's a comment period for everybody to tell us what you think about it. So typically when these reports come out, we will have a meeting with you guys, obviously, because we definitely want to hear what you and your community has to say. And the plans and reports may be altered. Every single comment or question is answered in writing, usually in the next report. But a summary of the questions that we do answer. Finally, after all that, the record of decision. The record of decision is where we say, okay, we've gone through the comment period. This is it. This is the final decision. This is how we're cleaning it up. And following the publication of this is when we can go in and do the final implementation of the final process cleaning up. That's not to say that that doesn't change stuff. So when it's in the record of decision or ROD phase, those remaining years, which can be, a decade or two, it's in what we call the operation and maintenance phase, just what it sounds like. The system's operating, we're maintaining it. However, you will see in the reports when they come out that we've built in fail states where we monitor what's going on. If we see that things need to change, we can do that. Typically, we want the contamination to shrink and get smaller, so we're going to modify how we treat it as we clean it up. And that's going to be during the O&M phase. And then, yay, the big thing is once we clean it all up, we're going to remove it from the registry. And again, we don't do that until we talk to the public. So we put it out there and we say, okay, we cleaned it up, here we go, here's all the data. We're going to take it off the registry, we're done. Make sure the community is okay with that. This is the step that's quite a ways away. Just for an example, this is what WQARF does, kind of in general. In fiscal year 21, our fiscal year goes from the end of June to the 1st of July every year. In 21, we cleaned up, or we treated 11.6 billion gallons of groundwater across the state. The statistics for what we do with the WQARF program, you can find on our website. You go to our website, go to the WQARF program. Every year we publish something called the WQARF report, and it describes every single site we have in the state and what we've done there this year. So this year you'll see 51st and Camelback will come out with the WQARF report. Our fiscal year ends at the end of this month. And you'll be able to see what we've done in the sites so far. That's it. Does anybody have questions about the process? And it's okay if you still are kind of confused about it as we go through the meetings. Feel free to ask questions about the steps whenever you need to. Yes?
Who determines the record of the decision? Is it the engineers or the board?
No, it's our technical people. So based on all of he asked who determines the record of decision. So based on all of the investigations and all the work we've conducted so far, come up with a plan and the record of decision we said, okay, this is the plan. So yes, our technical people do it based on what they've learned. However, when that's published, we want the community to let us know what they think about it. SRP, the City of Phoenix, City of Glendale, water providers, they will all comment and tell us what they think and what they want to see, as well as anybody in the community. So we do, they don't like come up with the cleanup method, we do. But before then, we have given them alternatives. We said, well, we considered this alternative, and this alternative. And we chose this one. So they can see where our thinking. It's not just absolute. Anything else? Yes?
When they pump the water out of the ground, do they clean it and put it back in, or do they clean it as it's coming out?
Well, I'll let Gianna explain a little bit about that. The question was, is the water cleaned when it comes out of the ground, right?
Yeah, right. And do they put it back in, or as we're using it?
Yes.
So it depends. So as an example, in the feasibility study phase, an alternative option could be, okay, we want to extract it and treat it, and if it's going to residents' homes or something, then we would make sure it's treated before it goes there. Or if it's going back into the ground, we want to make sure it's treated before it's put back into the ground. Or we have other options too, and I actually will talk a little bit about some of those options as examples, but you can treat it in the ground. So while it's in the groundwater already, you can treat it while it's still there. And so wherever it ends up, it's already been treated. So there's different ways to treat stuff. So we're not at that point with this site, but in the future, and as we go through more meetings, when we get to that point for this site, we'll talk about what options we might use here. But our website is also a good place to look at other sites. We have other examples of what we've done. In some cases, we've treated it before putting it back in, or we treat it before it goes directly to somebody's home, or we treat it in the ground directly. So different ways to do all of that.
Then when it's not contaminated anymore, you know you're done. It could take 2 years.
So it also depends too. The extent, where it's at, where it's used, that'll all kind of be fleshed out as we go through the process. So once we get through remedial investigation and into feasibility study, that's when we'll really have better answers for that information to know how long is it going to take, what options are we going to use, that kind of thing.
Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't, what she's saying is there's many different ways, we don't know yet what we'll use. Anything else? I urge all of you, before you leave, if you take my card and you need some help navigating our website to find this information, please email me or call me. I'll just walk you through where you need to find it. Some of it's, a little kind of wonky to get to. So we're glad to help. Okay, let me pull up the other presentation. Gianna, take over.
You said the clicker wasn't working?
No, it is.
Oh, it is working. I don't want to block anybody's view.
Do you want to sit here? Because the clicker will read.
I think right here all the time. I just didn't want to stand over there and block anyone.
Sure.
Sorry, could you speak a little bit louder for me?
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to talk today. That's the main presentation. So pretty much every CAB meeting will have a presentation very similar to this, and we'll go over some of the same things a little bit at the beginning, and then once we get more into the presentation, we'll cover like the new stuff, the updates, and progress as we go along. So you'll probably get used to seeing a lot of this. It'll look familiar after we do a couple more meetings. But go ahead and get started. I like to start with this slide. This is a site location slide just to get everybody reorientated to where we're at. So the site is called 51st Avenue and Camelback Road. That's this intersection here.
Gianna, it's hard to hear you when you point that way, so turn your face this way.
So this intersection is what we named this site because there was a underground storage tank well facility. There was a underground storage tank facility, and it well, a monitoring well with data that they shared with us that had TCE, which is trichloroethylene, in the groundwater. So that's how we found out about the site. So we just named the site the nearest intersection. That doesn't mean that the source is right there. It could be in the vicinity of that area. But that just makes it easier for us to give a name to the site and kind of designate a general starting point. And so this figure is a sort of conservative estimate of what we think the plume extent is in the groundwater. So this area is the potential area of impact in the groundwater. This is based on some of that preliminary data that we got from our preliminary investigation. So very conservative, and as we get through the slides, we'll see some new data in this area. We did drill some wells in this area to help us kind of determine, are we seeing concentrations go further out? Are they going down? Are they high? Are they low? How close are they to this intersection? So we'll get to see that later in this presentation as we keep going.
Can you guys hear Gianna okay? Okay, just to make sure.
And then as we do that, this figure will change in the future and it'll get updated on the website, and in our next CAB meetings and stuff, you'll start to see this figure change just a little bit. Once we get to the draft RI, in that report, we'll have a better delineation of what the plume actually looks like. So again, this is a sort of a conservative estimate based on the initial data. So as we get new data and more data, this will look and change throughout that process. And then just as Barb mentioned, this is a chart that we like to use to kind of get everybody on track to where we are. As she mentioned, for this site, we are in the remedial investigation phase here. And then just a general summary for us to make sure everyone is on the same page. Our 3 contaminants of concern are tetrachloroethylene, trichloroethylene, and 1,1-dichloroethylene. They all sound the same: TCE, PCE, and DCE. So PT and D. But they are all chlorinated solvents. They're been found in the groundwater in this area based on our preliminary findings. So these are our COCs. That's a term that will be used a lot in these slides and in reports and figures that you'll see in the future from us. We do know that groundwater is an impacted media. And we know that there's a threat SRP well. There's an SRP well actually just near us here in this, where we have Maryville Community Center. I think it's actually just up from us is where it's located. So we do know that that is a potential threatened well. From our preliminary data, we did not identify any private wells in the area that might be affected by the groundwater contamination. We do know that the water providers are providing water and their water is clean. So when you turn on your faucet, that water is fine. If you have a private well where you're supplying your own water to your own residence or your own business, those are wells that we would like to become aware of. In our record search, we didn't find any, but sometimes people don't always register their well. So if we don't have record of it, we don't know about it. So I think I mentioned this last time, and I'll probably keep repeating it. If you guys are aware of any private wells in use, or if somebody might have a well that they could be using, please let them know that we're doing this investigation. Reach out to us. We could even reach out to them. But we definitely want to make sure we identify any potentially threatened wells in the area. But so far we only have this one. And then down here, it's a little bit small, but these are the contaminants of concern, PCE and 1,1-DCE. They each have their own aquifer water quality standard. For PC and TCE, it is 5, but for 1,1-DCE, it is 7 micrograms per liter. So that'll kind of sum up a lot, and I'll try to keep this in the slide as a reference point for everybody, so we know what numbers we're looking for and what we're comparing them to when we get data. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of those PI findings. I went over most of this in the last meeting, but just to kind of briefly refresh people's memories, I want to go over it a little bit again. We first discovered the site in 2019. That's how we found out about the TCE contamination in the groundwater. We did our preliminary investigation from 2019 to 2021, and then we decided, as Barb mentioned, in 2021 that we're going to make it a work site, and so here we are today. And so just the photos, and I did show these before, but for folks who are in the area, working in the area, driving around, when we're drilling wells, you may have seen a lot of equipment like this. This is a drill rig, and this is the box truck, which is backed up right to the equipment. So you may have around the area seen this setup. That's just our guys drilling wells over here. And then this you may not have noticed. This was a really quick job. It was a passive sampling event. Really easy. You get a hand drill. You drill it down to as deep as you can go, usually about 3 to 5 feet. Small 2-inch PVC pipe. Pop it down there. Drop the samplers, which are actually in this little spring, and they're tied on a fishing line. And they go down. We try to get down to 5 feet if we can. Cap it for a little bit. Let it equilibrate. And then come back in a couple weeks. Pull the sample. Send it to the lab. So you can't see the sampler, but it's about this big. It's pretty small. And then one other kind of cool thing is when they're actually drilling, you can get soils. These are in the columns. So it's hard to tell on here, but they're marked with what depth they're at. So we can see what the soil looks like all the way down. And for most of these wells, we went down to 300 feet. So we can get a good idea of what the soil looks like going all the way down to 300 feet up here. And we can also collect samples at different depths as well.
I'm sorry, how many feet?
Most of our wells are drilled to about 300 feet. And then just a quick recap on the findings of the film investigation. Again, we discovered TC, PC, and DC. The numbers on here were the maximum concentrations found during the film investigation. We believe that each of these each of these is its own plume, but they're all in the same location. So it's a commingled plume. They're all together in the same water, or the same groundwater column, but we're looking at them differently. As I mentioned, we've got our threatened SOP well, and then there's potentially multiple sources of release, and that is something that we're going to be going over and trying to determine in the remedial investigation, is trying to find the source of the release. Is it one release for all 3 annelids? Is it one release per annelid? Is it the same facility with multiple releases? Is it different facility? Lots of questions that we're going to try to answer. So that's kind of the gist of the preliminary investigation. And what I really wanted to get to today was our remedial investigation, where we're doing now and kind of the process that we've been working on for a while. So the main point of the RI is to determine the extent of the contamination. As I mentioned, that figure was a very conservative estimate, so we really want to actually drill down and figure out where is it at, where is it not. And then again, the source, that's one of our main concerns, is we want to know where it's coming from. And then general groundwater monitoring. So now that we have a lot of wells installed, we can continuously collect data to see, are concentrations decreasing, are they increasing, are they here and they're non-detect for a while and then suddenly are they changing? So we want to keep an eye on areas where if we know it's clean, we want to make sure it stays that way. And if it's not staying that way, we want to know why. So it's good to have a good monitoring well network. And then our draft land and water use study. So this is kind of more records research information and also outreach to our water providers. So City of Glendale, City of Phoenix, SRP are some really big ones out here. So we sent them out letters and questionnaires, and it's a kind of 3 or 4 or 5 page questionnaire of questions of, what are you doing with the water? Where is it going? How many wells do you have out here? Do you have plans for developing areas of land for anything? Just to get an idea of what to expect. And you guys will see that report. It will actually be a part of the remedial investigation as an attached report. So it'll be draft as the remedial investigation report is draft, and it'll be finalized with the remedial investigation report. So it'll all be incorporated in there, and so we've just started working on that. We haven't got it written up or anything like that, but we have sent out questionnaires to try to get some information back. And then the draft remedial objectives report. So another report that will go into the remedial investigation report, which is going to be a big document. This will be one that actually you guys will have a lot of involvement in. You guys help us develop the remedial objectives for the site. So we'll have a meeting just like this, and it'll be mostly dedicated to that. So the remedial objectives themselves are essentially the cleanup goals for the site. So once we've collected enough information, we'll present that. And we can also present examples of remedial objectives to you guys. And then when you guys all kind of agree on what you want it to say, what you want it to include, we can put that into our report, and that'll be presented to the public in the draft RI, and then everybody will be able to comment on that as well. So that'll be something that will be coming up. We're not quite there yet, but that is something that you guys will have involvement in as well. And then, of course, the draft and final RI report itself. That'll be the biggest document that comes out of this. And we'll probably at least have a few meetings like this before we even get to that point. So plenty of time for questions, comments, and to figure out, do we have all the data that we need? Do we need more data? And we'll also identify data gaps. I didn't put that on there, but that's also part of it too, is identifying any data gaps we have and what we need to do to fill those data gaps the best we can. So some progress so far. I think Barb mentioned this a little bit. ADQ operates on a fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. So if I say this year, I'm usually talking about fiscal year, but please ask me to clarify if that's not clear. So this fiscal year, FY22, so July 1st, 2021 to the end of this month, June 30th, this is the progress that we've made so far on the site. We're drilling 8 wells. Again, you'll probably have noticed this is the setup on there. And we also confirmed the flow direction of the groundwater is to the southwest. And then we've actually got enough data that we believe we can delineate the plume to 80% delineation, which is usually like the bare minimum goal we want to reach. We want to do better, but that's like our bare minimum at most. And so I have some preliminary figures for you. And I believe this is the one.
Is that 13?
This slide 13.
Yeah. I think so.
Or might be the next one.
Slide 12.
Okay, I think the next one. Okay, so this one is just showing the groundwater flow direction. So some of the numbers on here. So like under here we have the well name 51C-MW07. That is the well name. And then the numbers under here, that is the feet above mean sea level. So that's what all the numbers here mean on this figure. And that's what helps us determine what direction the groundwater is going. And in a very simple way to understand this is if you look for the highest value number, so for example, 957 is the highest value on this map. And then if you look at a lower number, so like down here you see a 930, the groundwater is flowing from the higher to the lower. So that's an easy way to read some of these maps, is to look at where's the highest value and where's the lowest value. And then from there you can estimate the groundwater flowing from the high value area to the low value area. And luckily we don't have any complications here. In some other work sites you might see some interesting looking contour lines, but for us it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, so we're lucky. And then this one, please refer to the handout slide because there was an update to it. I believe in the slide originally 11DC didn't make it onto the figure, but we did get the data from the lab in time, so the handout has 11DC included as well. So again, those are our 3 COCs that we are interested in: TCE, PCE, and 11DC. And in red on this figure are, hopefully you guys can see them better on your handouts, but the numbers in red are above those standards. So again, that was 5, 5, and 7. And so I identified them in red so we know where it's exceeding the aquifer water quality standard. And if you recall from the previous presentation, I had mentioned that you see TCE a lot more in the north than you do PCE and DCE. You can see the ND here. ND stands for non-detect. So that means it wasn't PCE and 11DC were not detected in the northern area here. But as you go further south, you do start to see it pop up in some of the wells. And we do see to the east that neither of the contaminants were noted in that area. So that helps us figure out how far the plume is going in one direction or another. You have a question?
The units on PC and TC, is that in micrograms per liter?
Yeah, so all units for all contaminants on this figure are micrograms per liter. Oh, and I guess I didn't mention, but this data is fresh off the press. We got this in May, so we did groundwater monitoring in our wells in about mid-May. So I just got this back, which is why you got a last-minute update handout. Sorry about that. We'll try to make sure it's all together for you a lot better. But I wanted to make sure you guys had the most up-to-date data as possible for all the COCs for this meeting. And so our soil vapor investigation, and I did talk a little bit about this when we talked about the PI. We didn't get a lot of soil vapor data from our preliminary investigation, so the thought was maybe we don't have a widespread soil vapor issue. But we have done some additional follow-ups to that to see if maybe we're just not in the right area to find the soil vapor that we're looking for. Because usually with contamination, if it's from a surface or a shallower depth, it's going to leak down into the subsurface and then down to groundwater, so you'll still see soil vapor detections in that zone. So we're still kind of looking and poking around for some stuff, and we did do we had some potential properties that we were interested in that we investigated on property. So this is an example of the rig, of what that looks like. It's just a push drill rig. It's on a track. You'll see a guy with like a remote control, and it'll be just going down the road. So there was a couple areas that had some detections. They weren't high concentrations, but it's kind of where we're going from where we're at. And then we did drill one of our wells, and from 15 to 180 feet below ground surface, we did see some concentrations, I believe, of tetrachloroethylene and trichloroethylene at depth. So it was actually much deeper. It was closer to like 70 feet below ground surface that we found it. So we're kind of exploring that area a little bit with our current soil vapor investigation that is actually happening this week right now. I was there earlier this morning. I'll be out there again tomorrow. So I don't have that data for you guys to share just yet because it's literally happening this week. So our next CAB meeting, I'll definitely be able to share all that data with you, and we'll have figures similar to this, and it'll be in this industrial area here, and then up in this northern industrial area as well. So next meeting, we'll definitely talk more about that, but I did want to show you guys some examples of what that might look like. So if you're out in the area working or driving, you might see our guys out there. This is their setup, this is what they're doing. This is just an example of what the sampling methods look like. This is called a Summa canister. It kind of looks like a silver basketball. And when they're collecting the samples, you'll see it just on the ground, be there for maybe like 10-15 minutes as it collects the sample. And then they take that, send it off to the lab, and the lab gets us back our data. So that'll be something to look forward to for the next presentation. We'll have a lot of figures for that I'll be able to share with you guys. And then some other stuff that's in progress. Of course, locating the source properties is one of our main concerns, and our soil vapor investigation right now is hopefully going to help us narrow that search down a lot more. And then the land water use questionnaire, as I mentioned, that went out, and that's something we're also going to be working on as well. And this is just a figure of our community involvement area. So for the land water use study, we want to look at all the land use and water use that may be potentially affected. So again, this is a very conservative area. It's larger than our plume extent. Our plume extent is actually right in here. So this area covers a larger footprint because we want to make sure that we go even further than what we think the plume may be located. We want to go even further than that. So in our land water use study, when we see that report, it'll have figures similar to this one. It'll cover, what's the property use? Is it industrial use? Is it residential use? Water providers in the area, any potential receptors, that sort of stuff. That'll all be covered in that report. So that's all I had for you guys, but one thing I wanted to make sure is that you guys understood, some of what we were working on, this groundwater investigation, this oil investigation. So if you guys have questions about that, now is your guys' time to ask questions. Yeah.
When you were talking about soil vapor, does this include vapor intrusion into homes, or is that different?
So her question is asking about the soil vapor investigation and if that includes vapor intrusion into homes or if it's different. So actually, when we do certain sampling, it does help us get information that may be useful for vapor intrusion. So for example, when we collect samples about 15 feet, sometimes, depending on the location, we can utilize that data to determine if we think there might be a vapor intrusion risk. So a lot of our samples are collected at 15 feet for that reason. There's other ways to look at vapor intrusion as well, but right now we're so far from the data we have. So in the wells that we've drilled, every monitoring well we drill, because we're already drilling through the subsurface in that shallow zone, we collect a 15-foot sample. And some of the wells we did drill that were in residential areas, so for example, monitoring well 4 and 6, 11, and 9 were all drilled in residential areas. So all of those had 15-foot samples taken. And none of those ones had detections of the contaminants at 15 feet at levels that we would, see like a risk for vapor intrusion. But if they did, then there was a follow-up investigation that we could do. So it is sort of part of it, but there's kind of an extra step for that. So if we saw something, we would go the extra step, but we haven't seen anything yet. So it's kind of included, but there's still some more that we could do there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any idea where the source of all this is coming from?
So right now, generally based on the data that we have, we're looking in this kind of industrial area in the north. So this is West Camelback Road, and then north of here is just an industrial area that kind of goes along Northwest Grand Avenue. So based on what we're seeing, it's likely that the source is somewhere in that vicinity, but part of what we're trying to answer right now is specifically, what facility, what property, where, is it multiple properties, is there more than one that we should need to be aware of here? So we have it somewhat narrowed down to that area, but we don't have a specific property at this time.
There's cotton farms along down at Mom's yard, right down there.
Yeah,
For
and
years.
there's a lot of older facilities too. So during the preliminary investigation, we did do what's called a Environmental Data Research Report, EDR, and it gave us a lot of historic information. I think that cotton gin area, I think is here, and then a lot of this was actually agricultural before it became developed into an industrial area, and then to the south it became more residential. But yeah, so that is something that we're still working on, we're still looking into. Any other questions?
Yeah, I live at the epicenter of where this investigation is taking place, so I'm taking a personal interest in it, obviously. The levels of contaminants of PCE and TCE, is this normally found at wells, or has it already been determined that it's coming from an industrial source? And when, I'm going to have multiple questions here, when is it going to be determined for R&D that it needs to be re-engineered, the structure for the wells to avoid this from happening in the future?
So to answer, I think the first question there about how we know it's contaminated. So PC, TC, and 11-DCE are not naturally occurring in the environment, so they're anthropogenic. So they come from some man-made source somewhere.
So it's safe to determine that it is an industrial contamination?
It may not necessarily be industrial. It could be like light industrial or commercial use.
When is that determined? When will that be determined?
I would say,
The sources of the actual knowledge of that.
so during the preliminary investigation, the findings of that determined that there was contamination present. So that determination has been made, but where specifically it came from has not been made. So as we go through the remedial investigation and source identification, at the point in the process, we'll have, I forget what those letters are called. Once we identify sources, we do send out letters to those potential source property owners or facility owners at the time, owner-operators, and they'd be made aware that we're potentially looking at them. But as the process goes along and we've officially identified them or whomever as a source, that would get into a report. I believe it goes into, I know it's in the record of decision. I'm not sure if it's in the proposed remedial action plan or not, but it will end up in the report as the investigation goes on once we do identify potential sources and multiple parties. And then the second half of your question, could you repeat that?
The R&D, obviously, you guys would have to determine at one point where the restructure of development, research and development engineering is going to become a part of that, correct?
So you're talking about for like the remediation of
Yes.
okay. Yeah. So in feasibility study, that's when we look at all the different options I mentioned earlier, we might do some sort of extraction and treatment or treat in the ground itself, in situ is usually what we refer to. So depending on which option we take, we could build wells or re-modify the wells that we have to do that process. It'll just depend on which looks like it may have the better effect, and that's in the feasibility study phase. It'll be part of the analysis of, okay, we could do this or we could do that, and then we'll look at, okay, we have wells, or do we need to drill new wells, and specifically at this area, specifically on this property, or in a wider area. That'll all kind of be determined as it goes along, but I hope that answers that question.
It does.
Okay.
It clarifies.
Okay. And is that all of your questions?
I'm sorry?
Was that all your questions?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the historical sources. So typically a PCE or a TCE, you mentioned it's like in a solvent, so if they were doing some sort of parts, cleaning, or maintenance on their equipment, they could have been using this chemical. And it's also commonly associated with historical dry cleaners. So that's something that you may not think of as being industrial. It's kind of commercial, if you will.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, this area has been industrial and commercial for decades. So tracking down a potential source from 1960 may be difficult, or 1970 or 1980, who knows? So I just kind of wanted to put those ideas out there because it is based on the chemical. There was some confusion, I think, in the newspaper or the media when they did a television spot because it was associated with an underground storage tank site, a fuel station that the monitoring well was at that found the TCE. And so everyone thought the tanks had the TCE in it. And so, so just again, no, that's a different chemical signature, if you will, for fuel releases, and this is a solvent release. And so,
yeah, that's a good distinction because the underground storage tank release was fuel releases, so it didn't have the detections of this in there. They found TCE for us, and then they said, hey, you guys, follow up on this. This is coming from somewhere. We don't know where it's coming from. And then that started our investigation, and that's what we're working on. So that is a very good point of clarification for a lot of folks. And if someone does say, oh, it's that facility, you might want to mention, well, no, they found it, but it's not from them. They just found it. And thankfully they did, because now we know that it's there. Because if they had not, we wouldn't know. Anybody, any more questions?
Can you tell from the levels that you have historically how far back it might have been contaminated? Or we just know that there's a large amount of contaminant, it could have been recent, it could be 10 years, 20 years. Can we tell by how deep it is or how well it moves, etc., how long it's been contaminated or when it became contaminated?
So it kind of depends on a few different things to figure out how long it's been around. I would say concentration-wise, not necessarily, that wouldn't tell us how long it's been there. It just tells us how much is there now. And as we see concentrations going around, so for example, we see, we have high concentrations here and lower concentrations here. We know from this slide here that groundwater is flowing from here to there. So we know that at least over time, some point of time, that it has flowed from this northern area to the south. So we can kind of know a little bit that it's been there at least long enough for the water to have flown that direction. And unfortunately on this figure, I don't have feet per foot. So there is a calculation to determine like how fast the water is flowing. And then you can kind of derive from that kind of an estimate of time of how long did it take concentrations from here to reach the well down here. So there is some way to kind of tell like a little bit of time, but that's more how long did it go from here to there rather than it started in this year and now it's here in this year. So there is some kind of time that we can calculate, but it's not necessarily associated to a year in history necessarily. If we knew when it was first detected, so if we had data from a point in time that said, okay, if we had a well here back in 1980 and it was clean, then we know, okay, in 1980 there was nothing there. But then now we have the well, same well, now there's contamination. So that would help, but sometimes, we don't always have that data, and so we don't necessarily have a good idea of the year that it may have happened, but we at least know some information about how long it could have taken to get from the north to the south area. We know where it's at currently, we know what concentrations are currently, and we're kind of building that data table too. So every time we do a monitoring event, moving forward, we'll have data to see, are there any trends? Is it going down? Is the plume moving? Is concentrations increasing somewhere? Is there a source that, is still polluting the water that we need to find? But yeah, so that was a good question. And if I find data, yeah, I definitely would like to see if there's anything that I can dig up. But kind of part of the whole investigation process, continue to find and hope for new find sources of data.
Most of the chemicals that we're finding during these drilling explorations, some of these chemicals are in use since the 80s. So we don't, like you said, we don't know how long it's been seeping in and everything. So I believe most of these come out in 1955. And they've been in use until, I think it was 83. Because that's when the Air Force got it. So.
Yeah, so historical data, that's the information, so for direction, we give you that idea of general knowledge on how to use it. So the industry is not always clear when they start looking at PCE versus TCE versus TC, because there was that historic switch from people using PCE first, and then they switched over to TCEs, and from North Ohio switched over to TCE, or just used TCE for something completely different in their process. So it kind of depends too on the industry. So that's also part of the search that we're looking at. So once we have a narrow down area, we look at facilities that operate in that area. Did they use it? What specific use did they use it for? Was it just they manufacture it? Did they use it for cleaning? Did they just store it on site? Or, I don't think there was any disposal facility that I saw there, but some basically had to use it as a disposal of it in some way or treat it as though then you use it correctly. But yeah, so that is also a good point. We do look at the history of the facilities in that industry in there as well.
Take a look at Love Canal,
Yeah.
where they just buried it.
And we hope they didn't do that here. So.
That shows my hate, sorry. But honestly, truthfully, this stuff could have been here since 1955, 1960. Nobody knew about it. Nobody thought anything about it. Nobody thought about them burying 55 gallon drums. And after, let's say, 60, 70 years almost, we'll call it on the low side of 60, those drums are gone. They're rusted out there now. So, I mean, you'd be finding higher concentrations soon, or maybe never.
Yeah, and I mean that's actually one really great thing about source property investigations and soil vapor investigations is these are VOCs. So these contaminants, they like to be in a volatile form and they like to linger in that airspace in the subsurface. So if we get onto a source property, one of the things I would want to do first is a soil vapor investigation on that source property, because if there was some buried tank somewhere, that would help us kind of figure out this is a hot spot, this is where it could have been. It may not still be there, but you'll see some remnants of that there. So, yeah, definitely. Once we find that source, we'll do as much investigation on there as we possibly can to figure out exactly where it came from. Are there any other questions from anybody? I know I've got my contact information on the slide. I also did leave some business cards that I found over there. And then Wendy's contact info. Barb, you have your business cards over there as well. We have our Spanish translation services for anybody that needs it. So if you know somebody who's not here but maybe is a Spanish speaker that you think would benefit from this information, we can definitely set something up to help them understand and get that information. We do try to get most of our slides I think you guys noticed we put the Spanish and English on there for anybody, so if they look at the slides they can still get some information off of that too, so doing our best with that. I think that's all that I had, if nobody else had any questions. Okay, thank you. John?
Also, just so you know, we will have regular meetings, but if data comes up in between meetings that we feel you need to know about, we'll send you an email with sort of updates. Particularly as we get farther in the process when we're maybe, a long time between reports, we'll definitely send you an update, pretty regularly if we're not having a meeting. If you feel like there's something enough to talk about, we haven't planned a meeting ourselves and you want to have a meeting, you can call us and let us know and we'll set up a meeting, We'll either do it or you can ask us. Okay, let's turn to the next thing. Yes?
I had a quick question about the meeting minutes. Are they provided in Spanish?
They are. We have them over here on the table.
Okay.
Yes. What? Do you want it? So the meeting minutes don't go on our website until they are approved by you. So yes, we will have both the Spanish and English versions of the minutes on the website. However, the recording of the meeting is available usually the next business day after the meeting. So by law, by that open meeting law that we talked about last time, we have to make the proceedings of the meeting available to the general public within 3 business days. And how we do that is with our recordings, because we don't release the minutes until you guys have approved them. So the recording is not on our website, but it is available to anyone who asks. So after tonight, I will put the minutes up for the last meeting, and yes, we'll have to go Spanish language. Okay, let's turn to the next fun thing in your packet, which is our CAB application. We have an applicant for CAB. Ida, is that how you say it?
Ida.
So this is Ida here, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. The application's in your packet where she's written a little something about herself, but I'm going to let her tell you about herself.
Yeah, so I am a PhD student in environmental engineering at Arizona State University. My research focuses on bioremediation of chlorinated solvents, so the compounds that we were talking about today, TCE, PCE, cis-DCE, vinyl chloride. I focus on using microbes to drive these processes. And something that I'm lacking in the lab is my connection to the community and the people impacted by these sites that I'm doing novel research to try to remediate. And so that's why I'm here today and why I want to join as a member. Because I grew up not too far from here on 51st and Glendale. And I do want to be a part of that, communicating with the community, not only learning how you all function and reach out to the community, but also be actively engaged in reaching out.
So how we usually do this is if you all have any questions you would like to ask her, feel free. If you wanted to discuss it amongst yourselves, feel free. And then you need to decide whether you would like to vote on her application. So here's your options. You can take a vote. Somebody can make a motion to admit her to the CAB, and then we have a second and a vote. Or you can make a motion to table it until a future meeting. Maybe you want to think about it, and we bring it up again at another meeting. Or you can vote to simply say, no thanks. It's entirely up to you guys. So based on that, if you have any comments or questions for her, feel free. Otherwise, we would need a motion for one of those options.
I have a question. Do you still have roots here, like in the community nearby? Or like how exactly, like are you going to be connected to the community?
Yeah, my parents have a house on 51st and Glendale, not too far from here.
I would make a motion that we accept her for CAB.
A second that motion?
Me too. I accept.
Okay, great. And let's take a vote then. All in favor of admitting her to the CAB? That's unanimous. Awesome. Well, welcome. So next time we will have a little name thing for you, and you'll have a packet of information waiting for you. We'll be in touch with you to tell you about, how the cab works and everything, and give you all the information that you need.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is a call to the public. Generally at our meetings, what that means is we would take comments from the public at that point, which we still will, but we generally accept that during the presentation. So as you see, one of our members here has had comments and questions. That's totally fine. As long as it's on the agenda, we can do it in whatever order we want. But let's just make sure, is there anything else either of you have that you need to comment on or bring up? Okay, so let's talk about our next meeting. First thing, let's turn to Gianna and find out a timeline of what might be happening next.
Okay, so I did mention a little bit in the presentation that I'm hoping for our next CAB meeting to have that soil vapor data for you guys. So hopefully I'll get that kind of squared away at the end of this month, have time to review all the data and everything, why. I think a long time ago we were kind of doing these on a quarterly basis. So I mean, we could try for a quarterly fall. Yeah, something in fall, maybe late August, early September. It will also depend on kind of the findings of the soil vapor investigation as well. That'll help us determine what additional investigation we need to continue to do. So it could be fall, it could be early winter, something later than December. Because I do want to have a meeting for you guys with valuable data and information. So I just don't know how I'm not sure how the real investigation will pan out until we do it. So maybe fall, maybe winter.
Yeah.
If we try to shoot for a quarterly thing.
So usually, we won't really have a meeting until we have data to present you. And we will keep you updated as to when that's going to happen. So in a couple months I'll say, where are we? And then I'll let you know. However, if there is something you want to talk about that's not technical, in the meantime, we can still have a meeting and talk about that. Because this isn't an award and they still have a lot of questions about it. So, but generally, as you said, we're probably looking for that time frame. Is there anything in particular that you know of today that you guys would want to talk about at the next meeting? I'm sorry, say that again. Is there anything particular that you know of today that you might want to talk about?
Maybe I'll get this later in information, but I was wondering, how are these meetings advertised to the community?
Okay, so let's see. We send out a meeting announcement and an agenda to both a email list and a U.S. postal mail list.
Okay.
We post it on our website and we post it in our government buildings. That's the base. Anything else, we can put it anywhere else that you guys can think of. You can think of a place we can advertise it, let us know. If you know of any community groups or neighborhoods that need this information from us, let us know. We'll go there and we'll get it done. So that's the base of what we do, and we can do anything else. So what I would suggest is between now and the next meeting, email either Wendy or myself if you think of something you want to talk about at the meeting. Because if it's not on the agenda, we can't talk about it officially. Like I say, I would take my card if you want, in case Wendy doesn't know why again. And so you have somebody to contact, and we will be in touch with you before the meeting to say what do you want to talk about. But if you think about something you don't want to forget, just let us know. We'll put it on the agenda. Anybody else have anything else they would like to talk about tonight? About the site?
Es una pregunta pero
Ese questioning might be a silly one.
me gustaría saber si uno puede ir a acercarse a donde estamos haciendo el estudio.
I would like to know if you can go to the actual site and see where they're drilling or making the hole.
You can. There may not be much to see at this point.
What we can do is the next time that we're doing a well drilling, like a modular well drilling, see like can let you guys know. I would say, just keep your distance. It is an active work site. They do have PPE, proper personal protective equipment. So like hard hat, vest and stuff. So you can, drive by, park afar and kind of see what's going on. But I would ask that if you do go, be safe. Don't be in the way. But I can let you guys know the next time the drillers will be out there to drill a monitoring well. And you guys can kind of go and see what that looks like. We don't have a facility, like a source property for you guys to go and like visit and see. So this is kind of as good as it gets. And then we're also got these guys. I think like I mentioned, you'll see these guys kind of out there right now in the area. So you can drive by and see it, but just be careful and be aware that there's traffic going in those areas.
Yeah, there's a number of facilities at this point. We have wells. When they're completed, it's just a little well cover, like that the ground doesn't look like anything. Every gas station has it. You probably know what it is. When we do field work, when we drill a well, we do what's called a field notice, and we notify the community that we're going to be working in the community. And typically, what we do with those is we simply hand those out to the neighbors along that street. They are available as part of the public record, but we don't mail them out. So we'll hand those out to the local residents. But I will be emailing you or sending you those field notices. So if you'd like, when she has a drill rig, I can totally set up, a thing where we can all go out and look and see at a well being drilled. I can make sure we have enough equipment. If you don't have a hard hat, you may not be able to get too close, So I can see what we have that can help you guys if you want to see how well it's put in. But once it's put in, this is flush up your ground. Later on down the process, we may have some equipment, clean up equipment. If not, again, it's not a whole lot to look at, but it would be more than a well. So look out in your email or your mail for those field notices. And if we don't have a group thing and you just want to go out, I'm happy to meet you out there and take you out here and show you what's going on. Does that answer your question? Yes, thank you. Okay, if we're good, we need a motion to adjourn the meeting and a second and a vote.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Awesome. 7:15. That was quick.
So that's good because we had to clean up the area.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
The site is centered, it's supposed to be like 51st Avenue. And there are businesses, like there's that big break recycle place, and then there's like little industrials on the other side of the intersection. If this were, for instance, contaminated solvent that were just poured into the soil, they're going to take a while to get all the way down. Could we be picking that up?
So what's in the soil?
Like in other words, one of those buildings for years was an auto repair and motorcycle repair building, and I've seen it, and I know they just poured their solvents down, and they have one area that they designate. You didn't see them put them in 55-gallon barrels anyway. They even just put it in quarters. I know because I said something to them one time. I'm like, dude, you can't just. And they're like, but I was just wondering if that could seep in deep enough that would be part of what we see.
It could. It would depend what the contaminant is. It could be a fuel that is used or a solvent.
Yeah, because they use I can't remember because I know my dad was a mechanic, and that was one of the solvents we used to go get for them in the business that they used, and I'm sure they would use some of the same things as long as it was still available.
It's typically TC, what I've seen in like automotive stuff for like parts decreasing and stuff.
But this is it.
So you said it right along.
Okay, at 53, you've got 51st Avenue, and you've got Camelback.
Yes.
Right directly on the corner, it's a brand new, like a little tiny car dealership. Directly behind that, going up 51st Avenue, I think now it's another car lot water place that sells cars. But I would say for probably 20 years, it was just most recently, it was a motorcycle repair and shop. And then before that, it was an auto repair and shop. And both of them were they have great big dirt areas out behind the actual building itself that were just a minefield of puddles of crap. And I don't know that, that was, some of that was more recent. I'm thinking, I can't imagine it made it all the way into the groundwater, but I don't know it. It just bothered me, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get in on the on the CAB, because I thought at the time something didn't set with me.
I appreciate that, because any information, like stuff like that, because sometimes, like, if they don't obviously
And especially if it's like they don't want to, it's like used oil, you have to pay to dispose of it, and there are some people that just go outside or in the backyard and think eventually it's so thin they don't have to think about it, so they didn't have to pay for it, so I'm thinking, I know there are a lot of shops that do that, and I suspect that they might have been one as well, because I've seen the big puddles out in the back dirt areas.
Definitely, and it's in an area where we're looking.
And that's why when they came up here, said, I knew it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, well, I am working on the questionnaire. I hope to have it to you.
Steal this. Next time.
Okay. And if you need a little bit more time, like,